You are watching
In
Xirtus.
some sense, the Fraserian idea of how magic is supplanted by religion and science is frustrated by John Dee, but ultimately is vindicated.
Keep in mind, this is kind of important little context when it comes to Frazer's The Golden Bough, is that he was punished in a way for what the original, the first edition
Yeah.
of The Golden Bough
What he said
had.
about Christ.
Right. So you have a chapter that was removed for years that now you can read what he had to say about Jesus. And it was so controversial, he had the church come down on him. And, he's coming from Cambridge. He's very much an intellectual, just matter of fact, kind of similar to like what J.R.R. Tolkien was in terms of his relationship to anthropology, very matter of fact. I'm sure for him, he saw no controversy. But the church there was this conflict. I think it's backwards because I think it actually imbues Christianity in a lot of different ways, like the idea of the scapegoat and how it translates. And when you look at the origins of the scapegoat and all of this, but there's that introduction that came later from Frazer, and my feeling is it's almost like it reads to me like legal text. Like he's like, okay, like don't get mad. I don't take any of this stuff seriously. You shouldn't take any of this stuff seriously when it comes to the magic aspect or what we might call sorcery or whatever. Like he wants to basically compartmentalize this into another intellectual area. These people are pagans, they're this, whatever. I don't believe him. I don't believe that. I'm not saying that he's on the side of just like he's superstitious. I'm saying that his own relationship to the material, when you read through the Golden Bough, like just like if just that introduction doesn't correspond to the original writings of his treatment of it, if that makes sense. Like he was more objective in a different way. Like I don't like I think his understanding, it comes through that like that idea that what ancient people were doing, I think he considers it like a like a sane approach to living, because he has to know that like going through all of that work to see what these people were doing, he has to understand to some degree what the rationale for it was. Like he's communicating that, but then you look at the introduction and he's like treats it that doesn't even a thing. I think it was a response to the church. I think he was just like being like, hey, I'm not a heretic, don't freaking crucify me and scapegoat me for writing this, like we're good, right? It's like
Right.
I'm kind of weird about that.
I have to get into it. Have you, David? I don't know. Have you read Renee Girard's response to the Golden Bough?
But yeah, it's been a while, but yeah, I'm familiar.
That's something I want to dig into at some point, and it might dovetail with this writing of Frazer's that you're talking about.
Yeah, there's some really great old talks from like the 70s of like these like different professors like discussing the Christian aspects of the Golden Bough, and like basically saying, I'm kind of like I resonate with what they were arguing, because they're like, this imbues the text. It's kind of like my rabbi would say about the Sumerian tablets. He'd be like the Epic of Gilgamesh and these things. He's like, what are they afraid of? Like the religious people who don't want to have that, like to acknowledge that. He's like, it should just be the opposite. What it suggests is that there was this deluge. Like he's like, why would you ever want to suppress something that's an ancient cultural recognition of historical events? Like doesn't that help your case? Like what are you afraid of? And I feel kind of similarly as far as like the Christian elements in the Golden Bough, because he's arguing that like what we see in the Christian tradition has these ancient roots. And like you can call them pagan, but as far as I'm concerned, that just means civilian. It's just like regular people, like it's like this is something that's older. And that was C.S. Lewis's take on it too, was that was his argument to Tolkien. He's like, well, what if somebody fulfilled these ancient rites in a very direct, real way? And like that, why does this have to discount this? Like why, just because ancient people had this awareness, like why would that detract from 2,000 years ago somebody doing these things?
You
like,
don't need to know the rabbi's
out the ritual.
That's do you need to teach the islanders, the Sentinel Islanders, who Jesus is for them to be good Christians? I mean, do you? Probably not, being honest.
It's hilarious because the thing with the fruit in the garden, right? The knowledge. And then you're like, it's all in Who's Tommy, right? Which is a Rosicrucian film, by the way, really overtly.
really?
But the idea of Tommy doesn't know what day it is. He doesn't know who Jesus was or what praying is. So how can he be saved? And then you're like, so if you're deaf, dumb, and blind, you can't be saved. Like, maybe he's saved already. Like, the idea of the knowledge, like, you're like, this was the fall, was the knowledge, right? So what is the spreading of Christianity? Like, you need this knowledge to be saved. It's just like, wait, what? You need to eat the fruit? Like, I thought that was the whole point, like, that all knowledge is ultimately innate. Isn't that the Platonian kind of idea of like, and also it relates to something you were saying earlier, Andreas, about like knowledge and thought, is this idea that like to gain a new piece of knowledge, you draw upon the things you already know. And in a sense, it's like cell division, where it's like, it's dividing and it's expanding, which are really two sides of the same thing. Is there really any such thing as growth? It's relative, right? So like, even when it comes to your knowledge base, if your knowledge is just you drawing upon and compartmentalizing what you already know, is there ever an expansion of knowledge? That's why it's an illusion. That's why, like, the insight is so important, and that's what the Sefer Yetzirah communicates, is this idea of this lightning flash of insight transcends this supposed accumulation, which is it even really accumulating? Like, is something even really growing? You know? And it's like, and we get our ego attached to what we know and what we don't know, and it's totally connected to sex. Like, knowledge and sex are the same word in Hebrew, right? That's da'at, right? So you're like, it's like
people know them biblically.
Yeah, people's hangups around like their sense that, like, you know, that they've arrived. It's very much like you connected to, like, you know, your self-consciousness around not knowing something is pretty much identical to one's self-consciousness around the embarrassment of your own body. You know, it's Adam and Eve in the garden covering up. You know, it's they're more than linked. You know, it's like math and language. You know, it's like these are one thing. You know. Pretty far out, but I think that's what Freud was getting at too. I think he took that directly from Zohar, but couldn't say so because he had to establish that he had his own school of thought that wasn't just, you know, Jewish mysticism.
And D did focus on the Sefer Yetzirah. I just wanted to say quickly that Mythoclass brought up that D didn't actually speak with the angels that Kelly, Richard Kelly, Donnie Darko, Edward Kelly spoke at, was the median in the relationship, which is a thing that's probably worth bringing up at some point. Is Edward Kelly, you know, the boxed ears his entire life, and a lot of people will just kind of pawn off, well, you know, he must have just lied to perform wife swapping. Like, this is like basically the excuse that people like to come up with, but not everybody, right? There are apologetics for the wife swapping, and that would be,
like, so related to Marjorie Cameron. You know what I mean?
Well, I was going to say, because you have to get first, you have to look at like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and their sexual Enochian rituals, which, you know, it was in Victorian England, so they weren't really able to go as far as some Cambridge professors ended up going, right? And so Aleister Crowley brings the sexual rituals to kind of the, I mean, I wanted to say to the apex point, but really, I think the New Age culture, the Crowleyan New Age culture, this is what we live in today with Tinder, right? Is this sort of wife swapping culture, which is this idea that disassociates your spiritual relationship from the material relationship, which was what Edward Kelly was saying was a requirement in order to be possessed and speak with these angels. So there really is a continuity there. But sorry.
I think you're right. And Mythoclass is right to bring this up, that John Dee never spoke directly as far as the scrying session goes to angels, although there does seem to be this strange anecdote that pops up in the diaries that Dee was praying one day and the angel Uriel actually brought him the shoe stone, and he knew he was supposed to scry with this. This is my understanding. I'm not some sort of expert here. And he sought out a variety of different scryers after that point. But when the angelic communication with the alphabet and everything like that started, no, he didn't have any contact. And some people have speculated that, you know, when Edward Kelly like signed up for this, you know, if he truly did have these psychic powers or whatever he had, it was incredibly taxing on him. And he did this for 7 years. Maybe at some point, I tend to think that it was like authentic, whatever it was. They might have been talking to demons. I don't know, but it seems like it was authentic for a long
Angels
time.
and demons are pretty much, it's like the eudaimonia or just daimonia, the daimons, right?
Well, this is it, by the way. This is what's at the British Museum. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I mean, you could say one is good and one is fallen, but it's like saying like someone moved out of the neighborhood. It's an angel who's moved to a different neighborhood at that point.
Uriel was.
Yeah, I think it's more than location. I think it's more than location, but something that seems probable to me is that like Kelly got so exhausted with it, and then maybe he started to interject perhaps his own desires towards the end of it, and maybe the wife swapping didn't really come from these angels, and that he wanted to break it off and end it, and this is the way that he was going to do it. I kind of favor that theory at the moment.
I don't want to do human element to this too, because if you look at everyone involved, I think it was Edward Kelly, John Dee, and Jane Dee, which was John Dee's wife, right?
Right.
Edward Kelly was in his mid-30s. Jane Dee was in her mid-30s. John Dee was in his 70s.
Right.
So some of the accusation and the fact that it was Edward Kelly that was talking to Uriel, and he's like, hey, you're never going to believe what Uriel just told me. Just take a seat really quick. He says we have to swap wives. Craziest thing, I forgot my wife at home, but since your wife is here, maybe we just see what plays out and I mean, I feel like there is a human element here where there's like a 30-year-old guy sees a 30-year-old girl, and it's like he doesn't know what to do with her.
Well,
exactly.
There's Marlowe plays in this too, right? Marlowe of Faust. Isn't there a relationship with him at the same time? There's like a gay thing going on with Marlowe in the mix.
It's not gay if it's magic.
We'd have to right. We have to look into the particulars. But I wanted to say that there's something really misleading when we're looking at that beeswax, because this is a mental exercise, and I've seen you can visually represent it now in a way that you couldn't at the time because of what we have capable now, like even digitally, or even if you're going to draw the thing out, those fit into each other in the same way that the Babylonian squares fit into one another. Like, I'm personally convinced that the Tower of Babel is actually what you can do with the Babylonian squares is it's something that's happening on a metaphysical level with language and math, like what we're basically constructing here. Like, it speaks to the great work, but it's that one fits into the other. So you have this thing where you have one smaller, one's larger. It just goes they build into each other, and you're meant to be able to to have the degree of focus. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever done ayahuasca, but like you can focus in a way that like you can see levels of something and work them into each other. Like, I could build collages in my head, like laying on my back on ayahuasca, where it's like the amount of concentration. Like, I think there's exercises that you can do. Like, you can see this with like the Golden Dawn and stuff, these prescribed exercises to have this next level of visualization. Those geometries with that language, like they fit one into the other, and you turn them, and it's basically like a massive combination lock. And also, like the Babylonian squares, you're meant to visualize three-dimensionally. Like, you twist it this way and then you twist it the other way, so you keep turning it and twisting it, and each you can actually like build a community. You can see that there's an implicit communication in the thing that is that the order of it is impossible, like, but it's there nonetheless.